Do not imagine an explosion. Imagine silence and then the sudden realization that the world you know is already dead. 66 million years ago, Earth did not end with fire falling from the sky. It ended in the moments after when survival itself became impossible. If you had been standing anywhere on the planet during those first minutes, you would not have understood what was happening. There was no warning sound, no countdown, no sign that this was the last ordinary moment Earth would ever experience. The dinosaurs did not look up in fear. They had no time to. The object that struck Earth was already moving faster than sound, faster than comprehension. By the time the atmosphere reacted, the impact was inevitable. This was not a rock falling from the sky. It was a planetary execution. What followed was not extinction as we imagine it today. It was something far worse. The instant the asteroid made contact with Earth, the surface beneath it behaved like liquid. Solid rock flowed outward as if it were water. The crust of the planet folded, vaporized, and tore itself apart under forces no living thing had ever encountered. The impact site, now buried beneath what we call the Gulf of Mexico, became a wound so large that it permanently reshaped Earth's geology. A crater more than 150 kilometers wide and tens of kilometers deep formed in seconds. Entire layers of Earth's crust were erased. But the crater was only the beginning. The collision released more energy than every nuclear weapon humanity has ever built, multiplied beyond imagination. The shockwave raced outward faster than hurricanes, earthquakes, or sound itself. Within seconds, forests thousands of kilometers away were flattened as if struck by a divine hammer. If you were within a few thousand kilometers of the impact, survival was already impossible. Not because of flames, but because the air itself turned lethal. The atmosphere compressed violently as the shockwave passed through it. Pressure spikes crushed lungs, ruptured organs, and collapsed anything with structure. Dinosaurs didn't burn first. They were crushed alive by the sky. Moments later, the oceans reacted. The asteroid displaced trillions of tons of seawater, forcing it upward and outward in walls that defied physics. Tsunamis hundreds of meters tall raced across the oceans, not as waves but as moving mountains of water. Coastlines vanished. Entire ecosystems were stripped from the planet's edges. The water did not gently flood inland. It scoured the land down to bedrock, carrying soil, trees, animals, and sediments into oblivion. And this destruction did not happen once. The ocean rebounded again and again. For hours, waves slammed into continents from every direction, rebounding off landmasses and colliding with each other, amplifying the chaos. There was no safe shore. There was no high ground. But even this was not the most lethal phase. As the asteroid vaporized, it launched fragments of Earth itself into space. Rock, metal, and dust were blasted beyond the atmosphere, only to fall back minutes later. What returned was not debris, it was fire. 40 minutes after impact, the sky began to rain molten particles. Tiny shards of rock, heated to incandescent temperatures, re-entered the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds. Each fragment glowed white-hot, turning the entire sky into a moving furnace. This was not localized heat, it was global. The atmosphere itself began to warm rapidly. Heat radiated downward as billions of glowing particles converted their kinetic energy into thermal energy. Within minutes, the surface temperature of Earth rose beyond survivable limits. Animals that had escaped the shockwave and tsunamis did not escape this. Skin blistered, lungs burned with every breath. Forests ignited spontaneously, not from flames but from radiant heat alone. Trees became torches, grasslands turned into sheets of fire. Earth did not burn in patches, it burned everywhere at once. This was not a wildfire. This was planetary incineration. The night side of Earth was briefly spared, but only briefly. Heat traveled through the atmosphere and across ocean currents. The temperature difference collapsed. There was no cool refuge, no shadow. Within hours, the majority of large land animals were dead. Dinosaurs did not die slowly across generations. They died violently, within a single day. But extinction is not defined by death alone. It is defined by what happens after. As fires consumed forests, soot and ash were lifted into the upper atmosphere. Dust from the impact mixed with smoke from burning continents, forming a global shroud that blocked sunlight from reaching the surface. Day turned into permanent twilight. Photosynthesis collapsed almost immediately. Plants that had survived fire began to starve. Without sunlight, they could not produce energy. Entire food chains unraveled from the bottom up. Herbivores weakened first, carnivores followed, but the atmosphere continued to change. Sulfur compounds released from vaporized rock combined with water vapor, forming acid rain. Oceans absorbed these chemicals, becoming more acidic than they had been in millions of years. Plankton populations crashed. Marine ecosystems fractured. Life retreated, not forward. The world that emerged days after impact was unrecognizable. Forests were gone. Landscapes were stripped bare. The planet resembled a lifeless, scarred sphere drifting through darkness. Scientists would later describe this Earth as lunar, barren, silent, hostile, and yet, life did not end. Not because Earth was forgiving, but because some organisms were small enough, hidden enough, or adaptable enough to endure the impossible. Single-celled organisms returned first. In the crater itself, microscopic life began colonizing the devastation within years. Not plants, not animals, just chemistry reclaiming space. Then came ferns. Ferns do not need seeds. They reproduce through spores, light, resilient particles capable of surviving extreme conditions. As soon as temperatures stabilized enough to allow growth, ferns spread rapidly, covering the planet in green once more. But this was not a recovery, it was a reset. The animals that returned were not giants. They were small, cautious, nocturnal creatures that lived in burrows and fed on scraps. Mammals survived not because they were stronger, but because they needed less. Large bodies became liabilities. Food was scarce. Ecosystems were simplified. Only animals under a certain weight could survive on what little nutrition remained. Anything larger starved. Evolution slowed, then redirected. For tens of thousands of years, Earth remained locked in this reduced state. No dominant species, no towering predators, just survival in its rawest form. Entire ecological roles vanished, leaving empty niches that would remain unfilled for ages. Birds, descendants of dinosaurs, endured where their larger relatives could not. Their ability to fly, nest on the ground, and exploit diverse food sources gave them an advantage. Reptiles that could swim or shelter in water survived where others perished. But dominance was gone. The age of giants had ended forever. And in that vacuum, something new was quietly forming. Not immediately, not dramatically, but inevitably. The asteroid did not create mammals. It removed everything that stood in their way. Yet at this stage, in these first chapters after impact, Earth was still hostile, unstable, and unforgiving. Recovery was slow, painfully slow. Life was rebuilding without knowing what it was rebuilding toward. And the planet itself was still scarred, still unpredictable, still dangerous. What followed next was not an age of peace, but an age of struggle, adaptation, and silent competition beneath a dim sky. Because extinction does not end when the last animal dies. It ends when the world learns how to live again. And Earth was only just beginning. The world did not recover quickly. That is the part most people misunderstand. After the fires faded and the sky darkened, Earth entered a long, unstable phase that lasted far beyond any single lifetime. What followed was not immediate rebirth, but a prolonged struggle for balance. For months after the impact, sunlight barely reached the surface. Temperatures dropped sharply. What had been a greenhouse planet turned cold, uneven, and unpredictable. Some regions froze, others fluctuated violently between heat and cold. Seasons lost their meaning. Plants that survived the initial disaster now faced a different enemy, starvation. Without light, photosynthesis slowed or stopped entirely. Many species that escaped fire died quietly afterward, unable to produce energy. This collapse rippled upward. Herbivores that depended on these plants weakened first. Then predators followed. Fossil records show a sharp decline in body size across nearly all surviving land animals. Smaller bodies required less food, less oxygen, and less territory. Size, once an advantage, became a death sentence. In the oceans, the situation was just as severe. The impact disrupted plankton populations, the foundation of marine food chains. Without them, fish and larger marine reptiles declined rapidly. Some ocean ecosystems took more than 3 million years to fully recover, far longer than life on land. But survival was not random. Animals that could burrow underground had a clear advantage. So did those that could enter water, slow their metabolism, or eat a wide variety of foods. Turtles, crocodilian ancestors, birds, and small mammals fit these categories. Birds in particular represent one of the most important survivals in Earth's history. They are not cousins of dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs. Their survival preserved a direct evolutionary line from the Mesozoic era into the modern world. Mammals, however, were still insignificant. For tens of thousands of years, mammals remained small, mostly nocturnal, and ecologically limited. They lived beneath ferns and shrubs, feeding on insects, seeds, and whatever organic matter they could find. Their success came not from strength, but from flexibility. The fossil record shows that as plant life slowly diversified, mammals followed closely behind. When ferns dominated, mammals stayed small. When flowering plants and nut-bearing species appeared, mammals began to grow larger. This relationship was not coincidence. Plants reshaped the planet's food supply. New types of leaves, fruits, and seeds created richer sources of energy. Mammals that could process this food efficiently gained an advantage. Over time, body sizes increased, diversity expanded, and competition intensified. Still, progress was slow. Even 200,000 years after the impact, Earth had not returned to its previous complexity. Many ecological roles remained empty. Predator-prey relationships were simpler. Biodiversity was lower. But evolution does not require perfection, only opportunity. The extinction of the dinosaurs removed long-standing barriers. No dominant reptiles. No established megafauna controlling ecosystems. Entire ecological niches were suddenly open. Mammals began experimenting. Some adapted for climbing, others for digging, a few for running. Each adaptation increased survival odds slightly. Over hundreds of thousands of years, those small advantages accumulated. This was not a peaceful transition. Species competed fiercely for limited resources. Many failed. Extinction continued long after the asteroid impact. Not from catastrophe, but from competition. The planet was selecting again. By the time large mammals finally appeared, nearly 1 million years had passed. From the perspective of evolution, this was rapid. From the perspective of life living through it, it was endless uncertainty. And this raises a disturbing question. If one asteroid could erase dominant life forms, collapse ecosystems, darken the sky, and reshape evolution itself, what does that say about the stability of life on Earth? Because the forces that destroyed the dinosaurs did not disappear. They still exist, and Earth still moves through the same cosmic environment that delivered that impact, which leads to an uncomfortable truth. The event that made human existence possible is not unique in Earth's history, and it may not be finished with us.